Welcome back to the channel of truth, trust, and transparency. Today I wanted to make this video to educate you on the one calculation that I think a lot of people aren't talking about when it comes to equity, that people aren't thinking about, and can potentially trip them up once they get into that property portfolio building process. For this particular video, I've just used some round numbers so we can get the principle, but in a few short minutes, I'll show you the calculation, how we got there, and why it's going to be an issue for you as a property investor. So, what's typically happening at the start of the portfolio journey? Let's just say you're coming in and you're making a purchase for $600,000. You've been saving up for a little while now and you decide to put $100,000 down as the deposit, save a little bit on LMI, and you also want to get that loan as low as possible so that your repayments are lower and it's closer to a neutrally geared property. So your loan amount is $500,000. Now, what typically happens, and because we're investors and we follow everything property, and we follow me on YouTube, we know where to invest, and that property does extraordinarily well in the first year, and it is revalued at $720,000. Now, this might be 12 months, it might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be 8 months. That's going to be the one variable that I can't tell you in today's video, but it doesn't particularly matter. So the property is valued at $720,000. The loan remains at $500,000 still. Why? Because as investors, we use an interest-only loan with the bank to keep repayments as low as possible so that we can utilize as much of our cash flow towards repayments and the buffer in our offset. So year later, the loan is still $500,000 because we've been paying the interest portion of the loan off, which is our repayments, and not the principal portion of the blown off, which is the $500,000. Now, to calculate equity here, pretty easy and simple one. We just go value minus the loan, which gives us $220,000. Now, if you've been following my content for a while, you will know that equity and usable equity, as you can see, are two very different things. The calculation on usable equity is very simple. You take the value of the property and you times it by 0.8. That will give you 80% of the value. The banks typically are only going to like to loan up to about 80% of the value of the property. When we do that, 80% of $720,000 is $576,000. From that, we minus the loan, what we have owing, and then we get a number that tells us what the bank is willing to loan up to. In this case, there's a bit of a difference there, and we have $76,000 of usable equity. Hooray. But this is where most investors don't think about and where they get stuck in their cash flow. So they go out and buy property number 2. Perfect, good. Let's just keep around figures again. $600,000 purchase price. And because we've got $76,000 in equity, I'm going to say we're going to use all of this up. What happens after this? You put down a deposit of $60,000, you pay stamp duty, you pay LMI, and you pay legal costs, right? That's the cost of getting into a $600,000 property. Do we agree? Yes, of course. Now, most investors, when they're buying this property, they'll go, perfect. The property rents for $580 a week. Great, which is about a 5% yield. Nothing too out of the ordinary just yet. You can find that in most states quite easily, especially at a $600,000 purchase price. Now, the rent that we're going to be getting per year is $30,160 at $580 a week. And the repayments that we own to the bank at interest only for this new property, my repayments per year is going to be $32,400. I'm bringing in $30,000 in rent. Now take off maintenance, property management, and all those kinds of things. And my shortfall's actually not too bad. This is pretty decent. I can survive this. This is great. This is what a lot of newbie and new coming investors get wrong. Your loan is not $600,000, my dear friend. Equity is not free money, and you need to pay it back to the bank. As much as I love equity, because it's not like cash. Cash I've saved up after I've paid the old taxman anywhere between 20 to 45%. Equity, I've brought it out sort of for free. I don't pay tax on it, but my issue is it is still a loan to the bank. So in this particular circumstance, my purchase costs here are $71,763. That's still a loan. That comes out of this loan here. My loan for the property is $600,000. So my total loan is made up of two loans. One is the equity release on this property. It's going to be 76. You've used 71, but your total loan is actually 671,763 compared to 600. Why is that a big issue? Well, because your repayments on this at a 6% interest rate are $40,305, not $32,000. Now that's over a 20% difference between those two numbers, $8,000 a year. And if this is your theoretically purchase price, and you're repaying at $580, your yield's only 4.4%. Now, there's no issue with that, but if you're calculating and running your numbers on 32, $8,000 a year starts to be quite substantial, especially if you get 2, 3, 4 properties in. So you really need to make sure is that this loan, this equity release is still a loan. It's not just you pull it out of property 1, forget about it, and then use it for property 2. You're going to have a loan on this property for $500. This is the way it'll look in your bank. You'll have a $500,000 loan, and then you have this other little loan sitting next to it, and you can clean it up after, and we'll go into that in a different video. But you'll have this other one for $76,000. You have this one for $500, and then for the new one, you're going to have a $600,000 loan there too. So you're going to have 3 loans. People think that you've just got 6, or they calculate that off 540,000. They come here and they go, oh yeah, 600 grand. I've put a 10% deposit down. My loan's 540,000. Oh, my repayments are only $32,400. So 32,400 at 6% on, 540. I think I said 600,000 earlier. Repayments, they calculate that at 540,000 because they think they've put down a 10% deposit. Nuh-uh. You haven't put down any deposit. Well, you have, but it's still the loan that you're putting down. So your loan is actually $761,000, my friends, which is a repayment of $40,000 per year. Now, if the rent that we're getting from this property is only $30,000, we can probably shave off another 5 or 6 grand for property maintenance for property management and all those other little costs during the year. My shortfall between those two is going to be 15 grand. Starts to add up. Just one thing to keep in mind, next time you're planning your next purchase and you're doing an equity release, is that you have to account for the equity release in your cash flow and repayments rather than think that it's a brand new loan and this doesn't exist. If you have any questions on today's video, let me know in the comments below.